Let's talk about summer 2017. What led up to those events, and like specifically there, especially Barry Silbert, and yeah, then how did the fork happen, and yeah, and then also how did the other fork later that year, I think, or was it, no, I think later that year into Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Satoshi Vision.
Yeah, so lots happened there. So there was what was called the New York Agreement, and there was a meeting in New York that I didn't attend myself. I sent one of my, great guy, Jake Smith was his name from Bitcoin.com. I sent to that meeting, and so you had the CEOs of basically all the major businesses were there at this meeting, and they were trying to negotiate like an agreement to not have Bitcoin split, and so initially, like the people like Gavin Andreessen and myself, and they were talking about let's make the maximum block size 8 GB, and then it went from 8 GB to okay, we'll go 1248 GB, and then it went to okay maybe 200 megabytes, and then okay maybe we'll go. I think the next one after that was like 248, 16 on and on for a while, and then they said okay, how about 20 megabytes, and they said okay, how about 248 megabytes, right? And so we went from 8 GB at the start of the negotiation. There, the final negotiation was okay, how about 2 megabytes? We'll increase the block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. And the agreement there was that they would implement this thing called segregated witness, which is shuffles around the data storage in the blocks. And they would implement in a block size, base block size increase from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. And everybody came together and agreed to that. The part where I think if I had been there, I like to think I wouldn't have succumbed to the peer pressure, but peer pressure is incredibly strong. For some reason, everybody there agreed to allow the segregated witness part to be implemented first, and then the 1 megabyte to 2 megabyte block size increase would happen second. But everybody seemed to be on board with that. You had like 99% of the hash rate signaling for that, and the other 1% just, I think, wasn't signaling at all. All the businesses were on board. Everything was happening. And it seemed like, okay, Bitcoin was back on track again. There was a small group that I guess as a contingency plan, or they didn't really trust things to go through smoothly, because segregated witness is a change that you can't undo later. And lots of devs, for whatever reason, they don't like segregated witness, and they think it clutters things and makes it more difficult for them to do things in the future. And that's not something that I have an opinion on one way or another, but I know there certainly was and still is a camp that feel that way about segregated witness. So anyhow, segregated witness then activated on the network, and everything was smooth up to that. Everyone was quiet. Like it seemed like the community was kind of back, kind of singing kumbaya together again, and happy to be a big family again. And segregated witness activated. And as soon as segregated witness activated, then all these people came out of the woodwork saying no to 2 megabyte. We're not going to do the 2 megabyte upgrade. And they would DDoS attack any nodes that were supporting it. They had attacked Bitcoin.com and flooded every single person's email inbox there. They were attacking our nodes. Certain people even had the SWAT team called on them, where people would call the local police and lie and claim there's a hostage situation, get the SWAT team sent to people's houses. And it was really, really nasty, horrible, horrible stuff that was going on there. And they successfully got the community to abort the 1 megabyte to 2 megabyte block size increase there. And it wasn't until that had happened that the 1 megabyte to 2 megabyte increase was aborted, which was, a couple months after segregated witness had already been implemented. That then I looked around, I said, like, Bitcoin with 1 megabyte blocks, there's no way this can ever scale to be peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, which is what I'm interested in, what I've been interested in for a decade plus before Bitcoin had ever even been invented. I want peer-to-peer cash for the world. So I looked around at the cryptocurrency ecosystem and thought, what is the coin that has the best chance at becoming peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world? And of all the coins that were out there in existence at that point, it looked to me that Bitcoin Cash had the best chance at doing that, because every single person that held Bitcoin in August of 2017, they now still had Bitcoin and they had Bitcoin Cash. And so you had this equally fair distribution to Bitcoin itself, and fast, cheap, reliable payments for the world, and a team that actually wanted it to scale to be money for the world. Now, I was also interested in Monero and other currencies out there as well.
Why did you not? Why not Litecoin? I mean, I guess a lot of people at that point were obviously also asking why not Litecoin.
Litecoin didn't have BitPay, so it didn't have the 100,000 merchants from BitPay. It didn't have blockchain.info, which was it's still the biggest wallet in the entire world out there. Litecoin was definitely in the contention for that part there. The big part that I really didn't like about Litecoin was just Charlie Lee's complete and utter lack of understanding of the economics as to why Bitcoin became popular and why it was popular to begin with. And he was the lead developer for Litecoin. And I was concerned that Litecoin was going to have problems in the future because of that. And then the other part there that was just an interesting side story, Charlie Lee just had a horrible, horrible attitude the entire way through all of this towards Bitcoin Cash. And at one point, Luke Jr. is another guy for people that follow cryptocurrency deeply. Like, Luke Jr. is a really, really smart developer, but he's also a space cadet out there in La La Land compared to most other people. But sometimes he's exactly right. So Charlie Lee was on Twitter calling Bitcoin Cash just a cheap knockoff of Bitcoin. And Luke Jr. replied to him. He said, "That's awfully ironic coming from the guy who created Litecoin." And I thought that was a pretty good point from Luke on that day. And Luke Jr. is the guy who came up with segregated witness, how to do that as a soft fork. So Luke's a smart guy, but he's also like crazy on some other topics. Like, for example, he thinks the Pope is not Catholic, and he thinks masturbation is worse than mass murder because all this, billions of sperm cell dies every time. So he's definitely sees the world differently than most people in the world. But Litecoin was a contender there as well. But Bitcoin Cash, I still think Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum are the two front runners at this point, just because of the huge amount of adoption and traction they have. And Ethereum has a bigger ecosystem at the moment, but Bitcoin Cash doesn't have the same technical scaling problems that Ethereum is running into at the moment. And then Bitcoin just has social scaling problems. So and Monero, Monero is awesome. It just doesn't have the Bitcoin name. And you're already having entire countries like Japan, like Korea, and others, where they tell every single exchange in the country, you are not allowed to list Monero because it's too private. And that's a big problem for adoption. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash, you can say, oh, the blockchain is completely transparent. It's just as transparent as Bitcoin. But you also have this stuff that sits above the base layer protocol like Cash Fusion that gives you really strong privacy on Bitcoin Cash. So I kind of feel like that has the best of both worlds. But I hear a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, well, if you really believe in Bcash, why don't you sell all your other coins and just buy that one? No, that would be stupid. Like, you don't just buy one stock in the stock market, you buy a portfolio of stocks. If you're going to be involved in crypto, have a nice portfolio of stocks. So I don't just have Bitcoin Cash. I have lots of other coins out there as well. And I think that's smart for anybody to do. I've never, ever been a Bitcoin maximalist ever. In fact, even in the earliest days of Bitcoin, a lot of people don't know this, but it wouldn't be inaccurate in any way whatsoever to call me a co-founder of Ripple. I literally put up the seed money to start Ripple. Jed McCaleb came up with the idea, and he came to me and said, "Roger, are you willing to fund a new coin that doesn't require mining?" He said he thinks Bitcoin mining is wasteful. I have an idea how to make Bitcoin that doesn't need mining. I said, "Sure, Jed, I'll put up the money to do that." And I think that was in like 2012. So I put up the money that then paid David Schwartz to build what later became Ripple. Same story with Zcoin as well. Gave them the money to get Zcoin off the ground. I wasn't in the seed round for Zcash, but I was the biggest investor in their next round after they had a little bit of seed money there as well, because I want peer-to-peer cash for the entire world that enables every single human being on the planet to do whatever they want with their own money and not need permission. And I don't care if it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, Monero, Dash, take your pick out of the thousands of different cryptocurrencies. I just want something that works for all of humankind, and I want it as soon as we possibly can have it. And that's what I'm still busy working on today. And I like Bitcoin Cash so much because I think it's the one that's the closest to being able to reach and achieve that goal for the world.